Who is the best edge rusher in the 2020 NFL draft? Today we set out to find out that question by going through the top 10 edge rushers in this draft class. Pretty decent defensive edge rusher class. I wouldn't say it's anything spectacular, and I'll be honest, quite disappointing for the hype that this defensive class got going into this past year. Kind of the defensive end and the edge rusher position was really the highlight of what made this class so special. And looking back, there are only a few guys I would definitely draft. But it is a very top heavy defensive end draft class. A lot of guys who I would draft in the first round, and then there's a huge drop off as far as edge players go. And usually that is the case, but especially so with this draft class. Guys who I think just are limited overall as far as their ability, but still can contribute and be rotational defensive ends, and sometimes even in the case of starters. There were a lot of players that were per se honorable mentions. A lot of guys who were handsy, athletic. A guy who I think was first guy off the list was Michael Williams. Really came down to the fact that number one, a lot of his sacks, a lot of his big plays came off of just being open and being the guy who was unblocked. When he was blocked, it was just very inconsistent. He showed flashes of why he could be a first round pick. He's got great athleticism, great get off, fantastic hand counters, but just got to show a lot more consistency, which he just doesn't have in whatsoever anyway. Shout out to a couple of guys. I would say Ja Joyner at number 12, very handsy player, but nothing stood out about him per se. Wasn't the most athletic, wasn't the best as far as hands go, hand technique, pass rush technique, get off, nothing like that. So it was really hard to put him in the top 10 for that reason. And then Jordan Birch, another guy who I was extremely fascinated about. In my opinion, I'm playing it safe with Jordan Birch. The main reason being, I just have never seen a prospect like him at the edge rusher position. Guy who's that weight, 295 pounds, who runs 4.68 with his respective technique and skill set that way. I would like to see more edge rushers like that, who can kind of play these funky techniques. And from there, I think it will be easier to be able to dictate in the future where I have edge rushers such as Jordan Birch, but he is an athletic freak and he definitely deserves credit and definitely deserves a shout out on this list. But we'll get to number 10, starting off with Nick Skirton, a guy who my friends are a huge fan of, and specifically my friends who don't follow football. Very popular guy on social media for a couple of my friends who are alums of his former alma mater, Purdue, and now where he plays right now, being Texas A&M. Very handsy players, got great hands as far as being able to place them on the offensive line and being able to dictate where the offensive line accordingly adjusts. He's got great sense of direction, great sense of taking angles on the player. He understands leverage relatively well. I don't really see much of a problem with him in that sense. Uh, Really, what it comes down to is his ability to convert power to speed is fantastic. Playing at 285 pounds with that type of get off is amazing. He's got a number of moves from a club swim, cross chop. He's got a swipe and kind of a club rip move. He's great at shooting different types of gaps. He can play a bunch of different positions across the defensive line. Versatile as far as even special teams ability goes. Really, what it comes down to is as explosive and as athletic as he is, he needs to be able to loosen his hips up a little bit. As great of angles he takes, his footwork can limit him as far as he's stabbing his foot into the ground. Number one, that's a big concern for injury at the next level with that type of speed and that type of physicality you get. But offensive line are just going to clean that up every time, just maul you. He doesn't necessarily have that many counter moves. Is really just a one move, one trick type pony. And that's a huge problem. But he's better than most edge rushers in that sense in this draft. And I have Nick Skirton at number 10 for that reason. Number 9, a guy who I think is a jack of all trades, master of none. Tyler Barron, a lot more athletic than a guy like who I mentioned earlier in Jaw Joyner. Um, Barron has been a lot more productive per se, but what really stands out to me about um, about Tyler about Tyler Barron is the fact that he, I think, is extremely raw if you look at his overall athleticism. This is a guy who's 6'5". As far as his arm length, he's got 34-inch arms. He's got a 4.62 40. And he had 26 tackles for loss, so he uses his reach really well, even when he can't get in the mix because he's being blocked. He's great at handling double teams. He doesn't really get phased by anything. He's got great composure off of the physicality that offensive line gives, and he can play, inside on a 3-4 edge rusher type role. He's got great speed to power conversion, violent hands, really being able to hit the offensive line right under the helmet, really being able to disrupt their balance. Um, He's got a ton of counter moves. I like his cross chop move. I like his bull rush. I think that he's great as far as understanding offensive line formations and when tight ends are blocking and being able to avoid those and creating opportunities for his teammate. But again, it's the same thing as Nick Skirton, where he's a little bit more problematic as far as his overall mobility to flatten the edge. And I think that at times when he is in space, he just doesn't get to the right angle. But he's got great pursuit. He has long. He doesn't have the longest strides per se, but he makes up a lot of ground in very fast time. And his tape, I would argue that his speed on tape is faster than even what he had at the NFL Combine. But we'll go Tyler Barron for that reason at number 9. He's also got coverage skills that I think help improve his draft stock a little. But a guy who's also good in a different way as far as not being a traditional pass rusher, as in pass rushing. A guy who's on this list for another skill set, and that's going to be Jack Sawyer. If we're talking about pure run defense, guy is the best edge rusher in this class, period. There's nothing else you can really say about that. His ability to set the edge on run plays is just flat out phenomenal. What we saw him do in that one pass play against Quinn Ewers is basically what he does every time against running backs, being able to move them outside and then being able to play cleanup on aisle 7. Jack Sawyer is extremely strong. He's extremely physical. He has a mean streak. He's, able to do a little bit of that dirty work. He is a hard hitter, and his bull rush is absolutely fantastic. He's got a great cross chop move as far as a counter too. On top of that, but again, he's a one-trick pony when you take out those two things. As far as a pass rusher goes, he's very hot and cold, and I think that's a big problem. While he understands leverage very well, I think the overall his lack of relative consistency on strength can affect his balance, affect his ability to continuously use his motor, which he's pretty good at too. But I think the biggest thing for me is number one, the change of direction, but more than that, his just hand timing is just all over the place. He's got to have a better sense of direction of what the offensive line is going to be doing. He doesn't seem like overall great at reading the offensive line, and that's something that needs a lot of work. And I'm not sure that can be fixed at the NFL level. That's just more his own kind of capacity to inhale information at the next level. And he was a guy who definitely did stall at the college level. So I don't see him being much more than a rotational edge rusher, as are the guys behind him. But certainly as far as a run defender, I think he could be and end up being one of the best run defenders in the game in 3-4 years. And from that standpoint, he's definitely higher on my list than some of the guys who are better pass rushers. Number 7, we're going to go with Kyle Kenner. Relentless motor, does not stop at any point, puts his hands into your chest and just moves you back, constantly moving your hands around, making you really think about the kind of look that you're going to give him. He's extremely physical. He's got violent hands. He's got every now and then a decent swim move. Doesn't show that often, but he's a big guy. He doesn't really need that. He's 6'4", 254, but more bulky on its 254. Runs at 4.73, decent, but he's got several other hand counters. I think his rip move is probably the best. He combines it really well with his overall speed and his overall get off. He's got great IQ as being able to recognize screenplays and kind of adapt to those accordingly and get in front of those. He's got great timing as far as his pass rush moves go, but because of his lack of overall strength, he's a guy who can easily get overwhelmed by double teams. Again, another one of those guys who's just an overall one trick pony as far as he doesn't show the moves that he needs to often, as much as his arsenal is great out there. And his pad level is just really, really a huge problem. A guy who plays way too high, that's going to play into his lack of strength overall. He's going to get shoved all the time, but with the effort he shows all the time, if he bulks up a little bit more, I think Kyle Kennard can be a very serviceable edge rusher at the next level. Ahead of Kyle Kennard, there is a huge moving forward as far as the level of edge rusher we're getting. James Pierce is my first round one edge rusher that goes off the board at number 6. James Pierce is one of the most athletic players we have ever seen. A guy who ran a 4.4 840, very inconsistent as far as his overall pass rush moves, and in a draft that has a lot of pass rushing, hand technique type specialists. I don't think that it's fair to put James Pierce ahead of them simply because of his athleticism. However, he has got a lot more. He's got fantastic get off, probably the best in the draft as far as that, other than maybe who's number 1. A guy who's got some great pass rushing moves, from his club riff move to his swim move. A guy who uses his skinny stature really, really well. And although that can be a problem given the fact that he gets pushed off very easily, I don't see that. I see that being more of a benefit in the way he's able to get past bigger offensive line and fit into more narrow spaces. He's got 3-down versatility, being able to play on several different parts of the edge rusher. Very good hand usage in spite of the fact that he's very young. His rip move is great. He's got great instincts, great agility, being able to react to the offensive line accordingly. And obviously, he seems to have high football IQ in that sense as far as his overall recognition, both the pass and the run game. He's a great tackler, got great form as far as that. What it really comes down to is, again, that strength is a huge problem, which is going to be tricky because he's not necessarily the guy who can just bulk on and put on a lot of weight, and being able to then suddenly be a lot stronger. His game relies a lot more on his athleticism, and a guy who needs to develop counter moves to each one of his pass rush moves, again, relies usually on 1 or 2 moves, but more than that, his overall speed. And I think that is going to be a huge reason why James Pierce Jr. can stall out at the next level in comparison to some of the guys I have ahead of him. And then on top of that, he just doesn't understand really pull guard schemes that well. I think that can be adjusted at the next level, but I think that is something that definitely he hasn't been trained on that much, too much. So for that reason, I have James Pierce at number 6 for now. Number 5, I'm going to go with Landon Jackson. Landon Jackson is another guy who is just a relentless motor. Absolutely very consistent as far as constantly putting his hands through the chest of the offensive line and just being able to push them back. Powerful, strong player, athletic freak, a guy who ran 4.70 and just smashed all the cone drills that were at the combine. A guy who's really versatile, can play in a 4-3 and a 3-4 scheme, and at 6'6", got incredible arm length to be able to reach in the run game, and he's pretty good as far as using his hand technique to strafe running backs who get in his way, or being able to run side to side range for his size. That is incredibly impressive. And then you talk about a guy who can play 3 technique, wide 9. You're talking about off the ball. You could play a little bit of traditional defensive tackle, and a guy who uses power, converts his speed to power too. He's got a great bull rush. He's great as far as understanding pulling guards and understanding stunts and being able to adapt accordingly. His timing is flawless, and he sets the edge well. Really, what it comes down to is he doesn't have great bend at all. Against more athletic tackles, he's going to get mauled, especially if they're the guys like Trent Williams, who are both big and strong and still that athletic. Um, he relies more on technique than I would have preferred, and that's coming from a guy who loves edge rushers who are methodical in their technique. He's a guy who certain plays you look at and it's like, he has an open lane to the pass rush, and all he has to do is just use his get off and get by the opposing offensive line. But no, instead he will try to get through the offensive line rather than get past them when it's easier to do that. And his pad level is just all over the place. Sometimes he's playing too low, sometimes he's playing too high. He's not really good at playing low, but because of that, he kind of plays upright and then just gets pushed away. And again, he's a guy who relies a lot on power moves, doesn't have, a full intent when he's getting into a play, and a guy who needs to work on his overall kind of what's the word I'm looking for? His overall just pass rushing plan. And that's something I think he can work on. Like I said, he's very versatile from that standpoint, so it really doesn't concern me whatsoever. But Landon Jackson comes in at number 5. And number 4, this is going to be probably the biggest surprise for everyone. A guy who I really, really love, one of my guys on the draft, and that is going to be Elijah Roberts. Fantastic edge rusher, guy who's constantly able to give you different looks at the defensive line. He's got fantastic pass rushing arsenal between his chop rip move, his club rip, a powerful punch, powerful bull rush, swim moves. Everything you want, he's got. And he's not the most athletic edge rusher, but he's definitely more athletic than his combine stats would show. He's better on the 40-yard dash. A great leader, relentless motor, a guy who has violent hands, maybe not the most, but a guy who definitely shows his hands to threaten offensive lines and make them react more instinctively than based on technique, which is definitely, I think, a big fear that a lot of edge rushers would have for that reason. A guy who uses his length really well. For 6'4", 285 pounds, he's got incredible pursuit. He's got great versatility. He can stand up as an edge rusher. He can play 3-4, 3 tech. I mean, he's got incredible versatility that way, and he's got great speed to power conversion. What it comes down to me is the change direction ability. He's not nearly as athletic as the 3 guys ahead of him, and he's not nearly as consistent, especially as far as tackles go. In the run game, he is terrible. 21 missed tackle rate over the last 2 years. He doesn't got great technique whatsoever, and his processing is lackluster. But again, a guy who just raw talent-wise and as far as just overall well-coached, I think he can be a very good pass rusher at the next level, but he's very much a primary pass rusher. But at that point, very talented, one of the best in this draft as far as that goes. At number 3, we are going to go with Mike Green. Mike Green, I was a little skeptical on putting him this high at first, but the more and more I watch tape of him, the more and more I seem to like him. He has got fantastic, probably the best hand counters of any player in this draft. And it's nothing short of impressive. He's got powerful hands. He's got great length. He's fantastic at setting the edge. Uses athleticism well. Guy who's 4.5, 40 times speed. Was great at the 3-cone drills. For a guy who's only 251 pounds, he definitely doesn't play nearly as light as that. He uses his speed, but he's got great power to speed conversion. His hands are extremely violent, and he's always winning leverage over everyone around him. He's got great change of direction skills, being able to run around and understand trips really well. What it really comes down to, a lot of the big problems with him are that the strength. I don't really have problems with that because, like I said, from what I've seen, he's always able to win leverage. He's great in the run game. Really, what it comes down to, he doesn't have that much experience as far as coverage goes. Um, he tends to be a little bit over aggressive and miss tackles in space. Again, things that I think can be focused on, but that can be worked on. But on top of that, I would say that he is definitely not nearly as consistent as the top two edge rushers in the draft. So we'll go to number two for that reason. A guy who I'm a huge fan of, and I would say is the best value of any first round draft edge rusher in this draft. And that is Donovan Ezuraku. Oh my God, this guy is absolutely sensational. As far as production, matches up with Mike Green really well. A lot more productive as far as a run defender and as a guy who can constantly give you different looks as far as hand technique goes. He's got solid footwork, great change of direction. And a guy who's constantly putting fear in opposing offensive line because they don't know what to give him as far as their own relative look. He's very versatile. He can play three technique. He can play 3-4, 4-3 type edge rusher. He's great as far as cleanup sacks, even on top of the fact that he's able to create looks for his opposing defensive ends, taking on several double teams. He's got great flexibility. He can go low. He can get high on pad level to gain leverage. He's really good at understanding how much he needs to stand up in a play to gain leverage, which I think just shows how smart of a player he is. And he can give you a bunch of different pass rush moves at the line, or he could just beat you with his bend and just speed. And, he's got very rare Ben reminds me that way much of a guy like Von Miller. What it comes down to is he doesn't have a great bull rush. Really, more relies on just overall, kind of sexiness as far as hand counter goes. Focuses more on finesse moves. Lacks a little bit of strength. I don't think that's a huge problem in comparison to the rest of this draft, but it definitely is as far as limiting his overall potential compared to most edge rushers, guys like Jared versus last year. He doesn't have the greatest get off on the planet, and while he's got great hand usage, I think that he needs to be more quick as far as his counters. Things that I do think are going to be able to be coached, especially being able to set the edge on against the run for his bull rush. But again, his bull rush is not a huge problem. He has enough strength. He's a veteran. That's going to be something he gets right away. But I would like to see that more in order for me to have more trust in order to put him number one. But he's a lot more consistent than Mike Green as far as just generating pressure compared to Mike Green, in my opinion, and as far as how he generates pressure compared to Mike Green. So for that reason, I have him at number two. But at number one, I think it's very obvious. Abdul Carter. For those of you who are asking, I don't have Jalen Walker on the edge rusher. I know some people do. I have him as a linebacker. But Abdul Carter, honestly, I think he could play both as an elite linebacker and as an elite edge rusher. He's got great coverage skills. He's got great elite side-to-side range, which really helps him as far as a run defender. Can play pretty much all 7 positions on the front 7, from defensive end, interior defense tackle. Specifically, if you're talking about a 4-3 more than a 3-4, I don't think he could play nose tackle. He's too lean for that, but he could play all 3 linebacker spots too. On top of that, fantastic speed, incredible athleticism. One thing I love about him, I think that really stood out on tape, is his closeout speed. Once he has an open lane to the quarterback, it's pretty much over. And combine that with just long arms, his 6'3" frame, you're not going to get away from him. He's got about a 4.5 40, which just on top of that just goes to show you. I would have loved to see him be able to show that at the combine, but he's clocked in a 4.4 840 in the past as a 4.38 shuttle. He's also a guy who can power clean apparently at 350, which is just nothing short of very impressive. But really what stands out on top of that is his violence as far as hand power goes, as far as tackling. He is a hard hitter, and you're not going to love when he hits you in the chest or the abdomen. His cross chop move is just pretty much unstoppable. and he's shows extreme toughness, extreme relentless. He's very meticulous as far as understanding where to manipulate and exploit gaps. Um, I think the big problem with him is the fact that I don't think he's fully developed as an edge rusher. He's very raw, relies on his athleticism. But when you see those counter moves, they're flawless. They're unblockable too. So to me, as much as his hand usage is inconsistent, I think he's starting to get a better understanding, a better feel of timing. His pad level might be a little bit of a problem, but I think that's coachable. Uh, in his case, it's just really about adjusting his body and being able to contort based on how an offensive line hits you. But he is great as far as overall just being able to set the edge, his athleticism, his closeout speed, his pursuit on being able to hit in the run defense, and as far as a pass rusher goes, getting past offensive line, as far as creating great angles, as far as his overall defensive uh, defensive aggressiveness, something that I don't see from edge rushers often, and his versatility stands out above the rest. And for that reason, I think Abdul Carter is the number one edge rusher in this draft class. But that is it. Again, we'll go through the list one more time. Abdul Carter's number one, Donovan Izaraku two, Mike Green three, Elijah Roberts, the surprise, of four, Landon Jackson of five, James Pierce at six. Really, from Roberts to James Pierce, you can put them in any order. I really don't care. But that's just my list. Huge drop off at seven. You got Kyle Kennard, who I have a third round grade on currently as it stands. Jack Sawyer is at number 8, the best run defender as far as an edge rusher in this draft class. Tyler Barron, jack of all trades, master of none. And Nick Skirton, very good edge rusher in his own right. But those are my top 10. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Feel free to put your own top 10 edge rusher list. And thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.